Hey there, welcome to SQSR. Today we're going to answer, if it happened in November, why is the start of the Russian Civil War called the October Revolution? The question sounds simple, so let's take a look at the response. Like with strawberry wine, I expect anyone my age to currently have one thing immediately jump into mind, so here you go.
The first to sail was this ship, we believe called the Red October in reference to the October Revolution of 1917.
I looked for an image of the words Red October in Russian from the movie The Hunt for Red October, and I found that it sort of exists. In the title sequence, we get to see this before it morphs into the English words Red October and gains the prefix The Hunt For. But according to RussianLife.com, while the first word, which I believe is pronounced krasny, means red, the second is just gibberish to make the English-speaking audience see the word October. Oh well. 1917 was a pretty significant year in Russia. The year started off with the February Revolution, where Tsar Nicholas II, who had great facial hair, was forced to abdicate. And then in July, he and his whole family were executed. Oh, and maybe one day I'll share my thoughts on how Imperatrice Alexandria may have caused the revolution, and maybe even World War I. Killing the Tsar wasn't enough to stabilize the new government, and Vladimir Lenin's Bolsheviks led an insurrection in Petrograd on the 7th of November 1917, an event that is now called the October Revolution. That insurrection eventually led to full-on civil war, ultimately leading to the creation of the Russian SFSR and the USSR. And in Soviet Russia, November 7th was a public holiday called October Revolution Day. Wait, I can do better than that. In Soviet Russia, you don't celebrate October Revolution Day on November the 7th. Yet, October Revolution Day celebrates you! Wait, that doesn't make sense. Moving on. Oh, I know I'm riding into a bit of a tangent here, but the situation in Russia was so fluid in 1917 that the US State Department gave up on keeping track of who was nominally in charge and issued stamps to immigration offices that said, "The present government of Russia," for use in naturalization paperwork, where for England or the UK, it said George V, King of Great Britain and Ireland, or Austria got Charles, Emperor of Austria and Apostolic King of Hungary. And of course, not all countries were even common enough to get stamps, like this mythical Ferdinand II, King of Romania. Wikipedia says the correct answer was Ferdinand I. And yes, he did apparently have a number. And there was never a second. But yeah, the present government of Russia. So back on topic. Why do they keep saying October when the event happened in November? Well, let's speculate. Hello, and welcome back to Speculation Station. Our finalists, Team Dallas, have one question left to decide if they're champs or chumps. So, Cobb, why is November 7th called October Revolution Day? That's easy, Mac. This is clearly what's called a false friend in linguistics. There's just a Russian word that sounds like October, but means something completely different. No, the Russian word Oktober very clearly translates as the 10th month of the year. You're up, Bo. Is it like Oktoberfest? I mean, it's most really about a thing that spanned multiple days and they picked the starting date, but history talks about the end date? Sorry, no. While it's true that modern Oktoberfest isn't just in the month of October, it starts on the first Saturday after September 15th and ends on October 3rd or the first Sunday in October, whichever's later. The 7th of November was more or less the kickoff event for the Civil War, not the end of some other event. It's like you weren't even listening. So, Jones, can you save Team Dallas? Why is November the 7th called October Revolution Day? Is it possible that somehow people just didn't know it was November? I'm sorry, but... What? Okay, I'm told we're gonna give you that one. Sounds like a pity point to me. Alrighty, Bob, tell them what they won.
2 strikes means you don't win either the grand prize nor the home game. We will, however, validate your parking. Thanks for playing.
Apologies. Apparently, I'm not supposed to call it a pity point. Well, I'm Makatalep. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for another stop on Speculation Station. I need a drink. Wow. I'm with Mac. That was definitely a pity point. Nice shirt, Mac. I don't think I can pull that off. As everyone knows, there are 365.25 days in a year, because we have an extra day at the end of February every 4 years. The system of 3 years of 365 days, followed by 1 of 366, is called the Julian Calendar, because Julius Caesar made it law of the land during one of his terms as dictator of Rome. That's before becoming dictator perpetuo, when even his friends decided he needed to instead be a decaying corpseo. And this new calendar was so well aligned to the solar year that people could now put fixed dates for things like the summer solstice. Neat. Well, one of the things discussed in the Council of Trent, which was a series of meetings lasting from 1545 to 1563, and that's a lot of meetings, was a problem concerning Easter. You see, the Council of Nicaea, back in 325 AD, wrote down that Easter was shortly after the vernal equinox, and that the vernal equinox happened on March 21st. But observation said that the vernal equinox was now happening on March 11th. The council felt that it was important to fix things so the equinox would go back to happening on March 21st. And in a move that I find surprising, they decided they weren't going to solve it in committee, but rather said the Pope should just, figure it out. Why weren't things lining up? Well, the Julian calendar is built on the notion that the solar year is 365 and a quarter days. But the true answer is closer to 365.2422 days. 0.0078 days per year may not sound like much of a problem, but it turns out that after 1,282 years, you're off by 10 whole days. The Pope at the time, Pius IV, didn't solve the problem before he died 3 years later. His successor, Pius V, officially made not solving the problem a trend when he died in his 7th year as Pope. But his successor, Gregory XIII, did finally tackle it. In the papal bull now known as Inter Gravissimas, which was issued February 24th, 1582, Gregory fixed the drift problem by saying that leap years would no longer occur in years that ended in 00, unless the year number was divisible by 400. So 1600? Yes. 1700, 1800, 1900? No. 2000? Yes. It also said that the 1582 Feast of St. Francis, which was October the 4th, would be followed by the Ides of October, which is October 15th, thus deleting 10 days from the calendar. So in Rome, at least, there is no such date as October 5th, 1582. Today, we call this system of leap years, using an anchor date of October 15th, 1582, the Gregorian Calendar, since it was Gregory's decree that created it. It is worth noting, though, that the Gregorian calendar didn't fix the date drift problem. It just reduced it to less than 1 day every 3,000 years. So be ready for surprisingly canceling a leap year somewhere between 3,300 and 3,600. And a thing that I think was pretty cool about this decree is that it really thought ahead. While it was written in Latin, in the English translation, it includes But in order that nobody suffers prejudice by this, our subtraction of 10 days, in connection with any annual or monthly payments, The judges, in any controversies that may arise over this, shall by reason of the said subtraction add 10 days to the due date for any such payment. I don't know that 21st century governments would think to pre-resolve things like that. Where was I? Oh yeah. By 1582, the Pope no longer had authority over all of so-called Christendom. The Eastern Orthodox Church split off by around 1054, and the Protestant Reformation had kicked off in 1517. So while the Catholic Church was operating under the Gregorian calendar, the rest of Christendom was still using the Julian calendar. In fact, per Wikipedia, the only places where the governments were operating under this new calendar, starting with the Pope on the midnight ending October 4th, 1582, were the Spanish Empire, the Portuguese Empire, Poland, and the Prince Bishopric of Passau, which was then a region in the Holy Roman Empire and is now part of modern Germany, and quote-unquote various parts of modern-day Italy. The Russian Empire never adopted the Gregorian calendar. But one of the things the new government under Vladimir Lenin did was to decide to reconcile their dates with most of Europe. By 1918, the gap had spread from 10 to now 13 days, so Lenin's Russian SFSR followed January 31st, 1918, with February 14th, 1918. They probably could have backdated the jump to put the revolution into a so-called new style date, but backdating things is always weird. Anyone who had saved newspapers or had their own journals or whatever would all now have the wrong date. So, while the first anniversary of the October Revolution was styled as the 7th of November, 1918, any Russian newspaper reporting on it at the time would have dated the event as the 25th of October, 1917. And so it's still called the October Revolution. And by the way, Russia wasn't the last country to adopt the Gregorian calendar. The last country to switch from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian was Greece in 1923. But, per Wikipedia's list of adoption dates of the Gregorian calendar by country page, the most recent country to adopt the Gregorian calendar was Saudi Arabia in 2016. The 28th of Dhu al-Hijjah, 1437, was followed by the 1st of October, 2016. And no, that doesn't mean that anyone born in Saudi Arabia before 2016 is now 600 years old. Hello, cat. In an already tangent-heavy video, what's one more interruption? I've been making these videos for a little over 3 months now, and I generally don't ask anyone to like or subscribe, though it is always appreciated. I also don't mention that, like everyone else, I have a Patreon that you can join. But I have recently put up a survey that even free Patreon members can answer, so head on over and check that out. And if you'd like to fully join up as a scholarly squirrel, even better. And you get to enjoy outtakes from all of my videos, which often involve a certain orange cat trying to be a production assistant. So there you finally have it. The October Revolution is called that because it was still October in Russia when it happened, because they were still on the Julian calendar. Within 3 months, the new government moved to the Gregorian calendar, but thankfully didn't rewrite history. See you next time for another simple question and an allegedly simple response. Meow.